Guys, welcome back to another Bill Kelsey's YouTube video. Today we got our top 24 wide receivers for week 3 of fantasy football.
And before we get into it, if you guys want our full rankings, top 36 running backs, 48 wide receivers, 20 tight ends, and 20 quarterbacks, check our first link in the description to our Patreon. We're also answering every single fantasy question asked, and we'll be rating your guys' team over on Patreon.
The number 1 wide receiver of the week, again, needs no explanation, is Cooper Kupp against the Cardinals. Cardinals have been pretty bad against the pass to start the season, and Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp.
At number 2, another obvious one, it's Justin Jefferson. He balled out week 1. Week 2 was a bit disappointing, but week 3 we expect a bounce back. He's going to go crazy against the Lions.
And at number 3, Davante Adams. Yes, he was disappointing week 2, but week 1 still had 17 targets. That is insane. And we also do like this matchup against the Titans.
And at wide receiver 4, another elite wide receiver 1, it's Stefon Diggs. He blew up week 2, 44.8 points. He's averaging over 30 points per game on the season, 15 targets last week. The Dolphins are a great matchup. The Ravens torched them. We love Stefon Diggs.
And at wide receiver 5, and the first wide receiver in the next tier is Ja'Marr Chase. He had a pretty disappointing week last week, having 10.8 points. Plus, this matchup against the Jets looks good on paper, but with T. Higgins taking a bunch of targets, and we mainly like this game for Joe Mixon. Expect the Bengals to run a lot more. Still like Chase a lot, though, just not in that top tier of wide receivers.
And next up, we have another player that exploded week 2. It's Tyreek Hill. Against the Bills, we expect a high-scoring game. Tua should throw a lot, and we love Tyreek Hill.
And at wide receiver 7... it's Deebo Samuel. Yes, the Trey Lance injury sucks, but it does help Deebo big time. I think this offense is much better, and especially Deebo is much better with Jimmy Garoppolo as the team starting quarterback.
Next up, at wide receiver 8, we have A.J. Brown. He had a decent game week 2, 11.9 points, but he still had 8 targets. Week 1, he had 13 targets. He's a clear wide receiver 1 in the Eagles, and he is a wide receiver 1.
The first wide receiver in the next tier, shooting up our rankings, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has been an absolute fantasy menace so far. I believe he's averaging 29.9 fantasy points per game over the first 2 weeks. That is absolutely insane, and we see no reason for this to change. Jameson Williams is still not healthy. They aren't using Hawkinson a ton. We absolutely love Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Next up, at wide receiver 10, we have Michael Pittman. Against the Chiefs, we expect the Chiefs to maybe run away with this game a little bit. The Colts should have to throw a lot. Pittman's that clear wide receiver 1. Again, he is questionable, but if he can play, we love him this week.
And at wide receiver 11, we still got CeeDee Lamb this high. Yes, the matchup may not be amazing, especially with Cooper Rush, but CeeDee Lamb was still solid last week, having over 15 fantasy points. He is still the clear number 1 receiver on this team, and we still like him against the Giants this week.
And next up, our last borderline wide receiver 1. At wide receiver 12, we have Mike Williams. He was a beast last week without Keenan, over 25 points. If Keenan does play, it hurts him a little bit, but no matter what, Mike Williams is a beast this week.
And next up, at wide receiver 13, first player in the next tier is T. Higgins. He is the 1B in this Bengals offense. We don't think he's much worse than Ja'Marr Chase. Obviously, you would rather have Chase, but T. Higgins is still super solid. Outperformed Chase last week, having over 19 fantasy points. And again, don't love this matchup against the Jets because we think it's going to be more of a Joe Mixon game, but still T. Higgins is a great option for week 3.
Next up, at wide receiver 14, another guy that went crazy week 2, it's Jalen Waddle. Against the Bills, like we said for Tyreek Hill, they're going to be throwing a lot. They're probably going to be down this game. Tua's going to have a bunch of passing attempts, so we do really like Waddle as a wide receiver 14.
And at wide receiver 15, another player in this tier is Courtland Sutton. Yes, we are big Jerry Jeudy fans, but Jerry Jeudy is unfortunately injured. Not sure if he's going to play, and if he doesn't play, that helps Courtland Sutton a ton. Courtland Sutton had over 100 receiving yards without Jeudy, over 19 fantasy points. He had a great game. Love him again this week for week 3.
And next up, at wide receiver 16, a questionable wide receiver, we got Keenan Allen. He is questionable to play, plus his quarterback Justin Herbert is questionable to play. If Herbert doesn't play, that hurts Mike Williams and it hurts Keenan. But against the Jaguars, we expect no matter who the QB is, they should be able to at least move the ball, and we do like Keenan Allen.
And the last wide receiver in this tier is Michael Thomas. He has been absolutely balling, averaging over 20 fantasy points to start the season. Michael Thomas has been awesome for fantasy.
Our first player in the wide receiver 2 is Deontay Johnson. He's doing decent this season, averaging around 12 points per game, but the big thing is his targets. He's the clear wide receiver 1, 12 targets, then 10 targets. Hasn't been able to get in the end zone, but against the Browns, it could be a lower scoring game. Not great for wide receivers, but still Deontay is the wide receiver 1 there, so we do still like him as a wide receiver 2.
And another wide receiver absolutely soaring up our rankings is Drake London. He looked amazing last week. 8 catches, 86 yards, a touchdown, 12 targets. He's looking like he's taking over Kyle Pitts as that clear number 1 in the offense. Absolutely love Drake London going forward.
Our next wide receiver 2 is Christian Kirk. He's been balling, averaging over 20 points per game. First game got 12 targets, that lowered to 6 targets in week 2, but he still looks like the clear number 1 in Jacksonville. He's very solid. The matchup against the Chargers, they could go down this game, especially if Herbert plays. Lots of throwing for Trevor Lawrence. We do really like Christian Kirk this week.
And the last player in this tier, this is all dependent on if he does play. Missed last week with an ankle injury, it's Gabe Davis. If he does play, that clear wide receiver 2 in Buffalo, always a high scoring offense. Love the upside of this position.
And next up, our first borderline wide receiver 2 is Amari Cooper. Week 1, 4.7 points, majorly disappointing. Week 2, though, 25.1. He skyrocketed up our rankings. First game, 6 targets. Next game, 10 targets. He's a wide receiver 1 there. Against the Steelers, it could be a bit more low scoring, but we still do like Amari Cooper.
And at wide receiver 23, we got Allen Robinson. Rose up a lot after that horrible week 1. We all know how bad he was week 1. Week 2 had over 15 points. It would have had even another touchdown if it wasn't for that weird medical timeout. We do like Allen Robinson a lot for week 3.
And our last player of the video, our wide receiver 24, we have Marquise Brown. He's been very safe, around 14 points, then 13 points. He had 6 targets, then 11 targets. We do like him as the number 1 in Arizona, but Dortch is getting his points against the Rams, though. We expect a lot of scoring, a lot of throwing from Kyler. We do like Marquise Brown.
And guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Again, hit the like and the subscribe, and also check out the Patreon if you're interested. Thanks again, guys. See you guys next time.